Fantastic. And it's Admiral Jimmy Pete.
Yes.
And standard spelling, or Jimmy is standard spelling.
And Pete is,
P-E-E-T.
yeah, like the coffee.
A little bit about the,
P-E-E-T.
yeah. A little bit about the Texas Navy then. Many people know we had a republic, and that was for about a decade. What were the years of the Texas?
1836, April 21st, 1836 to February 19th, 1846.
Yeah, so we had 10 years of Texas being its own country.
Just short a couple of months. April, because that February 19th got us just a little short of being 10 years, but.
And when did Texas cease being its own country? Is it because we decided to join? Was it during the Civil War and that's precipitated things? Or what was the story of the end?
It was really the Polk administration, James K. Polk, who had it in his mind that he was going to make Texas a state during his administration, which was 1844 to 1848. He succeeded in that when, in 1846, the Mexican War started, 1846 to 48, because Texas has always claimed boundaries were the Rio Grande River, and Mexico said, no, it's the Nueces. So that was a battle of contention that Polk drew upon to cross over borders and get this going. And so it was from that the Mexican-American War was 1846 to 1848, in which we conquered Montezuma, conquered Mexico, and could have taken the whole thing, but we said, no, we just want this part. You keep this part, we'll take this part. And that's where the Treaty of Guadalupe Hidalgo was 1848, which ceased everything and set the Rio Grande as the border.
So Texas ended up sort of being in the crosshairs of a greater history that was happening and having to sort of submerge itself or to cede to these bigger forces, the United States and Mexico. That's sort of what happened. It sort of got snuffed out in a way.
It's really an extension of the American Revolution, which just only happened in 1776. The war being over in 1783, the Constitution coming into being in 1791, all this feeling, this euphoria of self-rule, independence, I can do it myself with God's help. All this was being born, and so that infiltrated or sifted down to Texas with the people that wanted to see it free, and that was opened after Mexico finally opened it up after 1821, when it's all, they were willing at that point because they realized they did not have the manpower to do what they needed to be done.
Yeah, it's very difficult to start a country, especially if you're physically, geographically part of a greater force, which was the United States.
Yes, and Mexico has enough land and territory where they were occupied with all their issues down in Mexico, and so when you get north of the Rio Grande, they had a difficult time of defending that and keeping that and supplying that, and that's what really caused all the strife and the discontentment, if you will, beginning with the Canary Islanders, who got here in 1731, which I descend from as well.
Okay. So any nation is going to have, the first thing they do is set up a defense force. Is that correct?
Well, one of the first things...
After a government.
Right. You need to have other countries recognize you, and you have to have a way to defend yourself and defend your claim.
Right. So that's how the Texas Navy came about, because that's what you do. And the Texas Navy, how many ships did it have?
The first Navy was 4. The Liberty, the Invincible, the Independence, and the Brutus. They were all purchased by McKinney and Samuel May Williams and Thomas McKinney were merchants who purchased these ships and gave them and sold them basically to the state of Texas for about $100,000, $150,000 that Texas was in debt to them. And from there, they used other ships to, like they had a steamer called the Laura in the Second Texas Navy. The Laura would latch on to the Liberty and pull it over the sandbar and go attack this other ship and put it in position. So it was a way for Texans to get involved and defend what we wanted, defend what we thought was ours. And it was all a matter of the mercantile, the trade, you want to defend that. When someone steals from you, you want it back.
So these ships were primarily defense. They weren't engaged in battle necessarily.
No, they were fitted primarily to as much as possible by the state, but then individual men, their own treasurer, outfitted the ship for war. Put the cannons on them, put all the munitions, all the things you needed to go to war. These ships were the Navy, were the actual warship.
They were ready to go. And I don't understand, there was a first and a second Navy, and I understand about the contemporary third. But what was the second Navy, and how did that come about?
The second Texas Navy came about because Maribel Lamar, the second president of the Republic, realized that we needed a Navy. Mexico was going to come back. We had to distract them. We had to get them away from here. And so he went into debt. He took the state, a nation, Texas, into debt to purchase these more ships. And there were like 9 of them. And these ships were engaged in defending the commerce that was going between New Orleans and Texas, being an escort. And then they would, if they saw someone that was behaving irregularly, they'd board the ship, take the stuff, divide it amongst themselves. There were rules. There were rules of engagement, rules of war, and these letters of marque and reprisal gave them the power to the authority to take these actions. And
The first Navy was how many ships, and then expanded to?
4 ships initially, and by the spring of 1837, just a year and a half, they're all gone, either repossessed for, repairs or on the bottom of the ocean. We're still looking for the Invincible, who got stuck on a sandbar, and a storm came in called Racer's Storm, and it was gone the next morning. And we're trying to find it still after 200 years.
So the Navy, like the U.S. Air Force, which had a lot of trouble getting off the ground and being accepted, the Texas Navy was not seen as necessary. Did the Army have a priority over the Navy?
Well, they did, to the extent that Sam Houston was an Army guy, and he understood that all you need is a rifle, and you will go out and defend your property. Very simple. You didn't need a whole lot of training for that. People knew how to do that already. Yeah. But when it came to the Navy, it's a totally different skill set, mindset, and so he didn't understand that. Plus, he had no money. So how can you support something if you can't afford it? But it was Lamar who really had the aspiration to take Texas as a nation forever and not be a state, but to be the nation of Texas from all the way from coast to coast. But he didn't have the training that Houston had with Jackson. And so Jackson instilled in Houston the mindset that, no, you will be important, but you will only be a state in the United States.
Yeah, they assumed they would continue to be a country, and thus you need to have a Navy. So basically, so you said that the naval base was in Galveston, and so basically they were patrolling the coast of Texas, which is the Gulf of Mexico.
Correct. They were going, and if you look at the map, it's amazing how close Yucatan is to New Orleans or to Galveston. It's really not that far. You got the big sea, and they so it's not that far. And there's actually a way station down in there in that area too that no one really knows about. But there's an little island down there, and so there's ways to regroup, hide, from your enemy with Cozumel and the mainland. But yeah, so we took the battle to them with these ships. We took the battle to them. And kept them off guard. Yeah. Because they were coming back. In fact, they did come back in 1842 twice.
The Mexicans.
The Mexicans came back, occupied San Antonio twice in 1842. Took our leadership down to the Perote prison. So the war wasn't over in 1836, April 21st. It wasn't over by a long shot. But we think it was because that was it. In our history class of 7th grade, we didn't get any more than that. But there's so much more that happened.
Yeah. History is a very convoluted subject. So today's Texas Navy, it disbanded when Texas joined the United States. So that was the end of that. Was it kept on officially? When did the Third Navy begin? What are the years for that?
That began in 1958.
And because of whom?
Governor Price Daniels. He saw that he needed an army to defend what he felt was his rights, Texas's rights, to the oil revenue off 100 miles of our coast. And not only Texas, but Louisiana and Florida and Alabama, all the Gulf Coast owned the oil out 100 miles.
He didn't feel he could rely on the U.S. Navy for that.
No, the U.S. wanted it and claimed it for the United States, and the state said,
Okay, it was the states versus the country, about states versus federal.
Right. So Governor Price Daniels said, no, over my dead body.
That's a pretty risky move to go against your own country.
It is, and that's the thing that makes Texas Texas, is we don't just take what they tell us without thinking about it. No. So he said, we're taking this action, and to defend it, every boat owner is now an admiral in the Texas Navy. And if called upon, you will take that boat and you will defend Texas and her waterways. And when you are honored as an admiral in the Texas Navy today, it says on the certificate, you will be called to arms and defend Texas if needed. So we are the army of the governor. So the governor, in order to reward people for service, and there's all kinds of service you wouldn't believe, like the president of the Texas Navy Association, his name is Scott Powell. He's a true mariner. He's a captain of vessels. He's the one that pulled up the Hunley, the Civil War ship off the coast. He's the one that did the sand dunes. He's the one that rescued the Exxon Valdez. He's the one that pulled the Hunley. I mean the Hunley. That was on the bottom. No, it was the
Exxon Valdez.
Exxon Valdez, and then the coal in Yemen. He's the one that got the thing out.
Oh, wow.
So how can the governor honor a man who does something like that for his country and his state? He honors them by naming him an admiral in the Texas Navy. Now, what you do with that's up to you. You've now been honored for service. Do you want to continue serving?
How big is the association today?
500 members.
Fantastic. And the mandate of the association is to honor this history and to share it.
And we want to teach people the history of Texas, the history that the Navy played in saving the Republic, the whole aspect of it that people just do not know, why it's important.
And would you say that boat owners along the coast are some of the members of the Texas Navy Association? And why are they members? Why would they be?
Mostly people are members of the Texas Navy Association because they love history.
Okay.
And they want to help us fund our mission, which is we create videos on YouTube and on our website, which is texasnavy.org or texasnavy.com. They both work the same. We produce educational videos for 7th grade teachers, for people, general adults, to learn what happened about these two navies, the 3rd Texas Navy, and we encourage people to come be a part of it. It's only $50 a year. We also, the governor honors women, naming them yellow roses. And it's the highest honor the governor can bestow upon women in the state of Texas. And so we go out and we find people who've done service, and we petition the governor to honor this woman as a yellow rose. And we do that, and we make a big ceremony, red carpet, da-da-da-da-da.
Community service.
Community service, yes. It's service to community, service to man, service.
Yeah.
It's all about service.
Well, that's a terrific interview. Thank you so much.